In the previous episode, a newcomer to town named Garrison Dodge forced through the purchase and development of Costanoa's newest neighborhood. This ruffled the feathers of a few of the other residents in Costanoa, and in particular Amélie Dubois, who in response has created the Baiemont property group with a few of her friends and business partners. The group is eyeing land on the northwest side of the peninsula with the aim to start a new town called Baiemont. Up next, I'll make a few changes in Costanoa before moving on to purchase the necessary tiles to get a start on building the newest town in Costanoa County. So the first thing I've done is off camera, I have again done a little bit of simulating so that I could accrue enough money to purchase all the tiles that I need and then also build some of the infrastructure that'll be needed in Baiemont. So you'll see now that I have about $2.5 million. That should be enough to get done what I want to get done. But on top of that, I also want to make sure that I have enough money coming in to support the purchase of those new tiles, because each new tile that I buy is going to have an ongoing cost to it. So I want to make sure I have enough money coming in to offset those new costs. So one thing I'll be doing is I'm going to go over in this area of town and I'm going to do a little bit of upzoning, and it's going to be fairly simple. You can see some of these row homes that are already in place right here. I'm just gonna kind of extend that out over here and then do a little bit of that over in this area as well. But before I even get to that, you'll probably notice right here, there's a little bit of a disaster that happened. I think that must have been while I was simulating. I'm pretty sure it was a tornado that came through. So I'm just gonna go ahead, and this is rather unfortunate in our brand new neighborhood, but I'll delete these. They should spawn in same building sizes and everything, so our terraforming should still look fine here. And it's just like I said, over in this area, what I'll do is I'll put in some row homes, and another thing I'm going to do is I'll probably place in one or two larger buildings, probably on one of the corners close to Market Street. And I won't take you through the entirety of me zoning everything out, but I will give you this like before and after shot so that you can see what's changed. All right, and this is what it looks like after I've zoned in everything and let it build up. Before I move on though, I want to zoom into a few places here just so we can see some of the detailing I've already done, and then add a little bit of detail in other places, and just overall see like a more close-up view of the area. So the first place I want to look is right on this corner here where Weeping Street meets with Market Street. And if we go in and look right here, this is one of the new Japanese assets. Well, not really new anymore, but I feel like it fits pretty well in this particular area because it has windows on the side. And then what I want to do here is I just want to add a small tree in to shield a little bit from the intersection. So we'll see what I can actually fit in here. Yeah, I think that'll do. So some taller trees and fairly dense as well, those pine trees. I like to use those sorts of trees. I can't remember exactly what those are called. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure exactly what it is, but I guess there's like coniferous trees, these like evergreen trees that have pine needles on them, and then they don't tend to lose their needles when, say, winter or fall comes along. And I think those fit in pretty nicely here. The other thing I wanted to show was over in this area, you can kind of see like this particular building juts out a little bit further than these ones on this corner. And I've done this thing where like I like to add in a little bit of buildings on the side just to give the whole block a little bit more of a rounded feeling. Over right here though, I wanted to do something a little bit different, so I added in one of these new pocket parks, and I think it looks pretty cool. These new pocket parks are very nice because they even have like 1x1 sizes. So I used one of the, I think it's this urban parkette, yeah. And I think that's just a nice little addition right here. The last thing I wanted to do was go over into this area, and I've done something similar to what I've done here, but I've added this UK medium density residential building here with it facing towards the alley so that the parking is on this side. And what I want to do here is, I don't know if there's a great place where I can get like a path to go this way or make it look like there's a path going, just because there's these bushes all the way around. So what I'll do instead is I'm just going to add some trees in this space and some bushes just to give it a little bit of extra detail. And originally I was just going to place down a couple of these trees, but I noticed that right in here there is actually another space for another home right here, so I am going to add that in. And then I think it's another good opportunity as well to use one of these new pocket parks, so I think I'm just going to add one of those on the corner here. All right, and that's in place. And I wanted to make one additional comment on the type of tree that I used here. So I use these poplar trees just because they're a little bit smaller, and I did actually want to maintain some of the views out of this building right here, so they're looking out over this park. So I decided to opt for a bit of thinner tree cover right here, whereas before I was putting in much more thick tree cover, and that's something I generally think about. Like you can see that here as well, this tree cover is a little bit more thick, and that's because these buildings right here, these row homes, don't have windows on the side, so I'm actually shielding this park from the side of those buildings, so it makes this park feel a little bit more secluded from these homes. With that increase to the density done now, you can see that we have a little bit more monthly income, 20,000 per hour now. That's a little bit higher than I was at before. I think it was about 15 to 18,000 before. So I think we've gotten a little bit more tax income, and I think that'll just increase over time as people continue to move into those new row homes right here. The next thing I want to do is with that new income stream, I want to go over and found our new town, which is going to be over in this area right here. And let me show you what the terrain looks like. So I'm eyeballing this area right here because it's relatively flat. And then also the thing that I am most interested in is this little plateau right here that is looking out over the bay. And it's kind of right next to this hill here. So the name of the town is Baiemont. And part of that is that Amélie Dubois is French, and the word for bay in French is also bay, but it's spelled B-A-I-E, I think. And then Mont, M-O-N-T, or Mont in French is, I think it's just a mountain, but that's essentially what this is referencing right here, is that hill, and then the view out to the bay. So that's kind of the background behind the naming of this area. The other reason that I wanted to place this here is that we take a look at the fertile ground. On this side of the highway, there's a ton of fertile ground. But then if you look at this side of the highway, there's none at all. So that's why the city is going to be placed right here. The first thing that I want to do is I want to get the road network set up. And actually, even before that, I'll have to buy the tiles. The reason I want to buy these tiles first before I buy the connecting tiles back to the city is that I just want to place the road network down and kind of see the amount of money that we're working with. And I worked a little bit on this beforehand to kind of map things out. So I do know that the tiles that I want to buy are, if we go and look here, it is these 3 plus these 2 right here, because you can see, it's hard to see in this game, but that hill right there is the ridge that I want things looking out over. So that is going to cost 472,000. We have plenty of money for that. The upkeep is 78,000 a month. We also have plenty of overhead for that, so go ahead and purchase those. And the very first thing I want to look at is I want to get a good look at the terrain, and I want to make one quick adjustment, which is just this little thing right here. I want to smooth that out just so we don't have that bump coming up. It won't really make things easier, but I think it'll just look a tiny bit nicer. With that hill not there, it'll just be a little bit more flat. The other thing is that I want this to be the key landmark in the city. So this is going to kind of guide our grid and guide the overall plan for the town. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to go over to this pedestrian street, and I want to put one kind of straight shot right through there. And this pedestrian area will be the downtown area for Baiemont. The next thing I want to do is I want to kind of figure out where the main spine of this town will be. So the way I'd done it before was somewhere around this area. So it won't be exactly centered, I think, along here, but it'll be pretty close to centered on this particular road. And I'll fix the smaller details later, but just know that beforehand I did map a lot of this out. So that's kind of what I'm basing this on. So I believe it's probably right there. And then I don't want this to all be pedestrianized. I'll only go out the 112, and that'll give us the full block size. So we're maximizing our zoning. The next thing I want to do is I want to take just a normal road, and I'll go out 192 meters, and that'll be our grid size is 112 by 192. And then from here, what I'll do is I'm going to take the pedestrian road once again. I'm just going to kind of connect things up here. And from here, I know that this road right here is just going to kind of continue out this way, and eventually it'll connect up there, but I won't go all the way. I'll just go out until a little bit before the road, so I can deal with that later. It's about to there. And I'll even scoot that back a little bit just to give me some space for terraforming if I need it. And then from here, I want a road that's kind of hugging the side of this hill, so I get a pretty decent slope. And I'll take a look. That's, yeah, so that's 2.3 there, so that should be fine. If I bring that this way, I want it to kind of meet up ultimately with that road right there. So I want that one to kind of terminate somewhere around here. I'll extend a little bit further than I need, and then up here, I'll just bring my road straight through. Let me get my right tools here. And then from there, I want this road to then meet up with this one here. And there we go. So then right here, I want this road also to be another standard road right here. And that will go. And then I'll bring this, we'll continue up that way. And I'll do the same thing on this side. And part of the reason that I'm angling the grid this way is that these roads right here that are going straight are not going directly up this slope, which would be kind of like this angle right here. They're going at a side angle, which I think should reduce the overall slope. It's a little bit hard to tell here. Yeah, like that's 3%, whereas this is 2.7. So it's a very small difference, but I think it'll just make things a little bit easier. This road right here is just going to continue on to there. And then let me get the last main road that's going to connect up to the highway going. And then rather than going directly up that hill right there, I'm going to start swinging up right about here. And then right here, let me get a different angle. I want this road to start swinging out, kind of ultimately to go this way. So I'll start that kind of over here. So we'll go here, and then I think I want to start following sort of like this. And then I also want to make sure I'm connecting up from here. And the nice thing here is that I'm using the pedestrian road, so I don't have to worry too much about exactly how this looks, but I do want to make sure that this connection is there. And then right here as well with just a normal road, I also want to make sure that this connection is in place. From here, I'll reorient back this way, and I want to start having this grid define where these roads kind of meet up. So I want these roads to kind of define, yeah, where the grid is going. So for one, I know that I actually would want this road right here to then meet up this one. And then I actually want this road right here to then be the road that connects up in this direction. And I want that connection to happen kind of where the highway right here straightens out. So I'll put it right, right here and come out. And then we also have that nice flat pad to work with right over in this area. This is where I mentioned I want this road to come in. I actually want that to just be a nice curve all the way over to here. And now what I'll do is I'll just continue this grid out a few more blocks. So that's the basic grid setup. The next thing I'll do is I want to make sure I'm getting these connections into the highway right here, and then I'll add roundabouts at all three of those locations. And this is what things look like with those roundabouts in place. And I wanted to just give a brief explanation of my thinking for this overall grid pattern. So if we take a look at our roundabouts right here and the entrances and exits we have for the city. So this first one right here, which is called Concord Street, that is one, I like to think of them as kind of like veins. So this is one like vein that goes into the city and it goes all the way through to this street right here, which is Anchor Street. And you can see that also with it highlighted right here, how it will bring people into the city, and it intersects with all these other side streets right here. So you can really get anywhere in the city coming in this way. On the other side right here, we have Willow Street. It's a similar thing here, but the one thing I want to note is that Willow Street and Concord Street run parallel to each other in the core, like downtown right here. So the thinking behind that is that splitting the traffic between these two streets in the downtown is going to mean if you're going to want to go out of town this direction, you're probably going to hop onto Concord Street if you're downtown, versus if you want to go the other direction, you'll hop onto Willow Street. So it splits up the traffic, and in our downtown, the overall feel will be that there's less traffic. And then thirdly, you have Emerson Street right here, which actually goes all the way from the core of our downtown right here, and then just takes you out of the city this way. So this street, I imagine there could be a little bit of traffic splitting onto here and then getting on the highway going either direction. But the major reason for Emerson Street is basically if you live kind of in the town right here, you have easy access of just getting out of town and onto the highway without necessarily having to cut through town on any of these other streets. So I think that makes like Emerson Street, Willow Street, and Concord Street the main through streets in the area. And then the final one I want to note is if I flip around here, this Anchor Street right here. I imagine that in the future, if we take a look at our topography, this street, I think it's going to kind of go up this way, and you know, it'll swing around here at some point. I ultimately think it is going to bring a good amount of traffic up into the neighborhood, whatever's going to happen up here, as well as Concord Street. So in principle, that's kind of one thing I'm thinking about when I'm designing a roadway network like this is how can I split traffic up onto multiple roads so that people can get to where they want to go efficiently? And then the other thing I was thinking about here is that I want to funnel all of the traffic kind of into our downtown core right here. This downtown core is actually pedestrian focused. So the idea is that like if you're going to drive here from say the highway right here, it's very likely that you'll end up in this area, and you know, maybe you park your car kind of towards the edge and then walk on our kind of main street right here, which is right now called Garnett Street, and you know, take in the views of the bay and the what is in real life called the Marin Headlands right here. And with all that in place too, I wanted to take a quick look at our monthly balance. You can see that it has dropped significantly, and I think that's probably just a combination of placing a bunch of roads and buying up those new tiles. The next thing I want to do is I want to create a second way to get over to this town without having to just use the one single highway, and let me show you what I mean by that. So if I exit out of this screen and then kind of zoom out, right now there's really only one way to get from Costanoa over to Baiemont, and that's to take this highway right here all the way over this way. There is an alternative route if you take this highway, and it actually kind of cuts all the way over here. Zoom in. Yeah, so you could technically go over here, and that's like, I would assume a route that's only used in, for example, like a state of catastrophe. Like if something goes wrong with this road right here, you theoretically could go all the way around. However, I do want to make some additional redundancy, and let me show you where I want that to happen. And it'll be useful to have the landscaping tools up when we do that. So if we follow this road right here, this highway, we reach a point right here where it flattens out. So this is the point where I want to make an additional connection. Now, I am aware like that does still create a bottleneck right here. So there is still a potential issue right there, but I think it does alleviate some of the traffic as well, because like you can still go this way, but also if something happens here, if there's traffic here, there is another way for people to go. So if we follow kind of this flat area down here, and there's some favorable slopes right here, eventually we can get kind of to this area, and you can see how there's some gentle slopes that go all the way down over here, and then it can meet up with Market Street right here. So that is what I'm going to take on next. It will require me to purchase a lot of tiles, and the reason I actually have to do this before I do it, I'll just explain why, is that I don't have power and water all the way over here. I kind of made the mistake when I was making this map of only having this one power line that goes into the city without having like an additional power line that say it goes, you know, this way. So if I want to build a new town right here, I actually have to purchase a bunch of tiles so that I can get power over. Alternatively, I could build like an internal power system right here, but ultimately I think that's just a little bit difficult to manage because the power output that you need, which we can see right here, and I'm actually a little bit low, the power output that you need is global, so it's not going to just be for this one community. I'll see it for everything. So that's another reason that I want to have that additional redundancy in the roadways. If I'm going to buy a bunch of tiles just to connect electricity, it makes sense to also just place down a road as well. So I had a chance to kind of survey things a little bit and make sure I was buying the right tiles. So I know that I want this one because, like I mentioned, it's on that flat area. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that road around this hill and start going down this hill. So that means I'll need this tile right here. And then from there, it's just going to start coming down here. And then it's going to cut over just a little bit. You can see the hill starts going down there and then onwards that way. So I know that like I want to buy the tiles right here, 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 here. So it kind of just goes up in a zigzag that way. I'm going to start with those tiles and not buy the rest of them to connect up the two areas, just because I want to do that in segments. So I'm not putting too much of a burden on my revenue. So I'll go ahead and then I'll buy these tiles. So if I come back in here, I know it's this. I hope I got that right. It'd be kind of a bummer if I didn't. Yeah, so I got that right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start building out that road, and I may need to buy some tiles over here just because the hill kind of goes down a little bit more gracefully right here than it does on these tiles, but I'll see once I get there. So I'll start on this side right here. And I think I want this road to be a highway, but I actually just noticed that I don't even have highways unlocked or large roads, which is, I know it's kind of funny. I have gone this whole time without having to build a highway. So I am gonna go ahead and unlock highways at a minimum. And then I'm gonna use the 2-lane highway, and I'll use a roundabout to connect these two highways. But I'm gonna use a 2-lane highway to connect over to Market Street on the other side of the city. And I've reached the point where I need to make my connection, and this area right here is what I was referring to, where it gets kind of steep. So right here we're at about 6% grade coming down this hill, and then over here a little bit better, around 5%. But it is a little bit steep, and it's definitely considerably more steep than if I were to come down more like this way. But the thing is, I think I do want to make use of the existing roadway right here, which is Summit Street, and make a connection in there so that we have a connection into Market Street and then an easy way to get all the way from here to the highway on this side. So I do want to actually make that connection in there. What I'm gonna have to do first is I'm gonna do just a bit of terraforming so that I can kind of cut up this hill a little bit and reduce the overall grade. And with that bit of terraforming in place, I think what I can do is I can now swing this highway up over here pretty easily. So there is our highway in place now. One of the things that this does actually do for us is it will open up some of this land right here for further development. And this land I could see for maybe some more industrial uses. And even if we take a look here at the specialized industry, there could be a good case for some coal mining up here or ore mining in this area. No oil that I can see. Actually, yeah, those oil deposits are pretty far, but there is some good opportunities for some mining in this area, as well as potential for forestry. So it does open up some new land. It opens up some opportunities for different kinds of builds. The other thing that I want to make sure I'm taking a look at is the economy tab. And at this point, we're now at 137,000. So there is still a bit of overhead to be worked with, but I'm going to have to start getting in some zoning in this area at some point. The next thing I want to do is I want to prep the rest of this build for next episode. So I won't be actually putting in the zoning here just yet. What I want to do is I want to have all the utilities in place so that I can start building here and dedicate a full episode to just building out the actual zoning. So what that is going to require is I will have to buy now these 3 tiles, and that'll be the last tiles I purchase. And it should, yeah, it still puts us within our monthly revenue. The next thing we're going to want to do is definitely get some power lines in here. So I'm going to have to go probably along this highway all the way in. So I'm going to pull from right here. If I can, maybe pull that back a little bit. And I'm just going to bring it, I think, just right along the highway. I can always move it. These types of things are, I think, much more reasonable to move around every once in a while. And I'm going to put contour lines in just in case. I don't want to go like up this hill. I'd rather go up this side. And I'll just leave that stub in there for now before I connect it up. The other thing I noticed while I was doing that is if we head over here, this particular slope is quite steep. So I do want to double check and see what we are actually working with. It is right about that 4 or 5% range, but I am going to redo this just a little bit, touch it up just to get that slope down a little bit. So I think that looks just a little bit cleaner here. I don't love that I had to do that level of terraforming right there. Like I mentioned in a previous episode, I want to keep things as preserved as possible. So I don't want to be changing up the terrain whenever possible, but that was a pretty light change. So I think in that case, I'm okay with it. I also removed these power lines and I'm going to put those back in just now, just because they were in a bit of an awkward position when I repositioned the road. The other thing I'll have to do is I'm going to have to do the same with water and sewage. So I'll bring that. I'm actually going to bring it into multiple locations. So I'll go all the way out there. Looks like I do have the water availability. Well, I won't once I start placing things down is my guess, but I do have a little bit of excess, so that's good. The other one that I saw before was our electricity availability is now really strained. And I'm also now realizing that I could, instead of having this big power line, I could have put lights underneath the highway. But because there's not really a whole lot going on in this area, I'm going to say that that was not a project that was done at the moment. So I'm going to keep it as is. I do think that these kinds of power lines running through, they can have an effect on the way that you develop things. So I like to have them in. So now that I have this second district, another thing that I want to do is I want to go over here I am going to do a quick review of the services that I have and make sure that the ones in Costanoa are going to be covering only Costanoa. There's another thing that I'm considering too, which is that my healthcare is a little bit low. And I've had this health facility over here for a while now, and there's probably some extensions I can do to give us that extra capacity that we need. But I think I will do both of them. So I'll add this ambulance depot, and we'll also add at least one extension wing. And let me zoom in to make sure I'm adding that in a good spot. I think right there should be fine. It tacks on nicely. So if I go back and look at our healthcare availability, it is like right on right now. Looks like 150 and 150. This is something I am considering is an upgrade to these facilities in Costanoa. That could look like one of these newer medical centers like this Japanese one, possibly even one of the new hospitals. I think that's another thing I'm going to leave for now, but I do want to go in, and for these facilities, I want to select operating districts. So this one will just operate in Costanoa. And let me find my other facilities in here. I think I have one more. So this one also will just operate in Costanoa, and then this crematorium also just in Costanoa. So I will need all of these services in Baiemont, but I don't want the vehicles to be traveling all the way over there to cover Baiemont. So now what I'll do is I'm going to do the same for at least fire, rescue, and police and administration. I think I want those to be separate as well. Education, I think I will leave for now, just because that's a little bit of a more difficult one to manage, and it's quite expensive. So I'm going to leave that for now. Transportation, the transportation, I think it's just going to serve Costanoa for now. In the future, we can expand that, but that is not for today. So now I will go in and adjust the fire. We only have the one station right here, the firehouse, that will operate only in Costanoa. And then we also want to check our police, just this one here, that will also operate just in Costanoa. The other thing I'm considering too is I mentioned that larger hospital. I think having maybe a fire station in somewhere that is kind of on the outskirts of Costanoa, a little bit closer to Baiemont. The same goes for police station. So those could be like maybe county facilities, and they could cover both. But for now, these smaller facilities, I just want to cover their individual cities. And because I've added these extensions onto this medical clinic, I think what I am going to do is I'm actually going to fill out the rest of the space. I'm pretty sure I won't be adding any additional extension wings here. Like I said, I'll probably put in a hospital next, so there's not really much need to have additional space here. What I will probably do is I'll probably just put a little bit of commercial here, and then the rest will just be basic residential. Once again, I didn't do anything too complicated here. The one thing I'm now noticing is that I actually have a basketball court here and a basketball court here, so I am just gonna get rid of that one and try to put some different park in here. And fortunately, the dog park has the exact same footprint as the basketball court, so I think that works fine right there. And I was viewing this on a different angle, so I was looking at this angle, so the trees to me looked kind of okay with their spacing, but then I looked over here. I don't think I like exactly how it looks from this side. I think there's not enough cover to shield these houses from the medical clinic and vice versa. So what I will do is I'm actually just going to use a different tree and something like a birch maybe to go in between. It'll look a little bit different and then also give additional cover. And I think that is a lot better. It doesn't look too crazy. I think if you get too many of these evergreen trees next to each other, like if these were all the exact same spruce tree, it would look a little bit too dense. But if you break it up with a different type of tree, I think it looks a lot better. And because I won't be finishing Baiemont today, I figured I would go into the Dodge estate and then add a little bit of additional detail. What I want to do here is I want to accentuate the views that the Dodge estate has by putting in some assets around it. And then I also want to add a small guest house right in here And I think the type of building that I want to use for that is actually one of the Japanese low density homes. And I think it'll match visually well with this more modern looking mansion. And yeah, that is pretty much what I was going for. It even has some of the nice bush detailing around that kind of matches. But you can see like it has these, light colored sides, whitish grayish sides, and then the roof is a darker black color. So I think these two buildings match together pretty well. And with that prepped, I will go ahead and get started with the detailing. And I just manually placed a lot of these fence assets that came with the UK, I think it was, asset pack. I'm not going to go any further than just right here, primarily just because it takes a while to put all these fences in. But I think once you're on the property, the fences don't matter as much. I really just wanted there mostly to be like a visual shield between this property and the road right here. The next thing I'll do is I'm just going to go through this front area and then detail that a little bit. And that's one small portion of the property done, but I just wanted to give a little bit of cover from the road and then add just a few assets in here. Like I added in a small playset and a little goal, as well as a fountain, an additional fountain right here, and then a bench for sitting at. And I didn't want to add too much in the front here just because it's right up against the road. I thought about putting maybe like a little entertainment space right here, but again, it being so close to the road, I think is not exactly what Garrison Dodge would have in mind in terms of privacy. So I think I'm going to preserve this area for something like that. This area, I'm not exactly sure, but I do know that I want to preserve at least the views out this way right here. As well as you can see, this is a 2-story house. I think it makes sense to preserve some of the views out towards this direction if possible, but I'm a little bit less concerned about that one and mostly just concerned about getting these views preserved. And while I'm right here too, I can see that this bus facility is right here. So I think right down by the road here, I'll want some tree coverage to block that. And that's where the one area probably that I will be putting in some tree coverage to block views, as well as actually probably along this side to try to block a little bit of the views right here. And maybe it'll open up views this way and then more towards this area as well. So I'm going to try to isolate certain views. If we take a look at the views from this area, you can kind of see what I was going for here. So we come in right here, and I can probably even get lower with the camera mode into the first person view here. You do see some of that going on right there, the industrial area, but I think that's okay because if you look over this way, you can't really see any of that one right there. And I wanted to have enough of a view right here that it was justified. Like I had a tree right here before, but I think it was a little bit cutting off a little bit too much. And really depending on where you are, it can be a lot different. And this area as well, I wanted to have kind of the primary best view because it has this chair right here and then this kind of fancy chair that probably costs like $35,000. Looking out over probably the prime view in this specific area. And then looking back this way, you can see kind of the bigger downtown buildings and then back over to the mountains there. So I think that's pretty cool. I'll go out of that view real quick and get back to the home. So I was also considering this specific area right here. So if I go back into the camera view and kind of put myself right there, swing around, and then we can see that I did put this palm tree right here, but I use these palm trees specifically in this area because they don't obstruct views too much. And if you're sitting right here, I still think you get a pretty good view even with the palm tree there. And then out here, you have a completely unobstructed view out to the bay. And then this large hill. I tried to put a little bit of foliage on the hill, like right here. I put some, and then kind of, yeah, just all around this area. There probably could be some right here, but I wanted the view to be as good as possible looking out this way. The other area I added a little bit of detail to was next to this guest home right here, and I'm actually going to rename this as well. So the Garrison Guest House, and back here, I wanted to add a little bit more of a practical use. Not that the entertainment isn't practical, but I wanted this to be kind of like a garden area. So these are kind of, these are meant to be gardening beds. They're flower beds in the game, but you know, maybe this is like lettuce and rhubarb. I don't know exactly. And then I put a couple of the flower pots back here, and this you might see as like tomatoes or peppers or something. I also added 2 of these greenhouses here and some trees and then a tool shed. And I think it overall fits as well with the aesthetic going on here. This also has its own little garden area. While I was looking at this aerial view, I also realized I think I want to blend this forest back here a little bit better, just so it's not so rounded. So I'll get that done really quick. And every time you see me having to redo these brush sizes and things like that, it's because the game crashed. So it's either that or I took a quick break, but this time it was a crash. And I think that just feels a tiny bit more complete, so I will leave it there. The other thing I wanted to look at really quickly is if you come down somewhere around this area, maybe like right here, you can kind of see this imposing structure on the hill there, which I think is pretty cool. There's probably plenty of cool views back over to that particular asset. Like if you live maybe in one of these areas right here, yeah, you've got like this crazy fortress on top of a hill kind of thing going on. So I think that is really cool as well. Not only is the view out of this building cool, it is also cool towards this building, which I wasn't necessarily going for, but I'm glad it looks that way. And that is going to do it for this episode. As a quick recap, what I did in this episode is I added a bit of density in the downtown of Costanoa, and the purpose of this was to finance the purchase of all the tiles I needed to get the services over to Baiemont. I also detailed the rest of the Garrison estate, and that was just something that was left over from the last episode. In the next episode, what I'm going to do is I am going to build out the rest of Baiemont. I may not get to detailing, but at a minimum, I want to get the zoning in there as well as the city services that I'll need to keep Baiemont running. It's going to be pretty important to get that done because our monthly balance is actually just barely in the negative now. We do have a lot of extra money left over, and that's just going to be used to purchase the service buildings that I'll need for Baiemont. But I want to make sure I start getting zoning in so I make use of all this land I've bought and it's not just a net negative on our balance. I hope you enjoyed this build. I definitely really enjoyed making this particular grid here. I always enjoy planning out those types of things and thinking how traffic will flow in a new area. If you've got any ideas for any sort of builds we could do along the highway and that newly purchased land I have, definitely leave that in the comments below. But that is going to be it for this one, and I will see you in the next one.